I have a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee and now it is 2023. So I had it since it was new for now over 22 years. And I've never changed the shock absorbers. And if you can see, when I drive it, it's going to make some noise. So I'm going to push on the front side. And you can see the shocks are already bad. So when it drives, I get a lot of knocking from both the front shocks. Though this one, you can see a lot of play in that shock. So today I'm going to do the shock absorber replacement in this video. So for replacement, what I chose are the Gabriel ProGaurd. So there are a variety of different brands and different types within the brand. So you can go with Monroe, Gabriel, or any other shock absorber that you think is a good quality. I just stayed with Gabriel, and this one is number 61664, and I will put a link on my video description for you to go and look up the part on Amazon. And these were each around $26 plus taxes. And the shock looks like these. This is a little heavy duty Proguard. I would suggest you go with Proguard or even light truck, because these are made for SUVs and light trucks. And you need a little bit tougher shock absorber. Instead, if you go for a cheaper one, maybe you will get some in the I have seen some shocks from Gabriel which are the lower end ones, which are priced around $10, $12. I would avoid those. These are nitrogen filled shocks, and also you can see it has a little larger piston diameter, and it has a bigger oil capacity, so it helps when the shocks compress and expand. It helps in the dissipation of the heat. And also the higher diameter, larger diameter will help also with your the feel of the shocks on your front side. I am not going to replace my back ones today. I'll just replace the front ones. The back ones are still good. Maybe at some point I should. I removed the tire, and you can see this is where the shock absorber is, and this is pretty much the original shock absorber. It needs to be replaced. So you can do it without removing the wheel, but it might be a little difficult, tricky to get these bolts out. So there are two bolts over here and the one on the top. There is also, remember that the jacking point is right where the arrow is, and I have put I've left the jack on jack on it, and then the jack stand I've left it over here, but it's difficult to get both the jack and the jack stand at the jacking point. Be careful of not putting the load on any other place, because it will probably damage your frame. The passenger side, you can see right over here, it's pretty much in the clear, and this is where you have to remove this bolt. But the problem is, and it takes a 15 millimeter, and if I try to use this, it will turn the whole, you can see the whole shock absorber top along with it, so it's not going to help. So I have to grab the top portion with something. But before I do that, I'll spray some PB Blaster. And this PB Blaster is good. I don't have that much rust, but in case you have rust, it's always advisable to let it soak in with some PB Blaster, so it will loosen up a little bit. And I'll do the same thing with the bottom bolts here. It's not horrible. We are in the Washington DC area, but if you are in one of the rust belts, you might get more rust, and especially my Jeep stays in the garage, so it doesn't it is protected somewhat. The lower bolts take a 13 millimeter. I have a deep socket here, but a regular socket probably will be fine too. And then I have loosened this one, and this is much easier to remove, partly because the top ones are not going to move. So once I removed the bolts, I just pulled it out, and now you can have a little more clearance on this one. So the trick to removing this bolt is to put in a 6 millimeter socket, and this, you see the head, this one takes a 6 millimeter socket, and then I put a 15 millimeter wrench over here, and I wedged it against on this thing. It just sits there, and the way it is you need to turn this counterclockwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this wrench, and I'm going to pull this, and this will take the bolt out. It is very difficult, otherwise you won't be able to remove the bolt, and you can hear some screeching on the bolts, right? So I just got it loose. So once I removed the bolt, this one is the old one, and I'll clean these surfaces. So you can see that this one actually is sitting on top of the bushing. The bushing is, it's been 22 years, so I am still amazed how these bushings are still working. So you can see this is the trick. This has like a 6 millimeter bolt pattern. In the new one it is a little different, but also you can see that this one is attached to the original strut, and this is the original bottom bolts are pretty much attached to it. Now I'm going to put this on. I'm not going to release the tension yet, because once you release it, this will expand and you may not be able to put this back into your space. The bottom bolts go with a washer. You can see there's a washer that came with it, so you can put the washer in here, and then on the bottom side, the this one, which is the washer for tightening the bolt, goes in, and then once I put it on the groove, and then I will tighten the bolt with these two. So I'm going to put this into place, and it should line up properly. And once I put the two bolts in, and the washer goes in with the bolt, I have tightened the lower bolts slightly, and I'm going to guide this once I take this off, the tension off. One thing is, you might hear about priming these shock absorbers. For Gabriel ones, you don't need to prime. You need to just let it sit with this position, and it will automatically distribute the oil and the gas inside. But in case you want to do it, then you have to take it off and pump it like 3-4 times. So I'm going to use any kind of clippers to just clip this. While putting this in, put the lip towards the top, and the reason is it fits right in there in the hole. You can see it is going to fit right. And I'm going to guide this into, and just make sure that this one fits in there. I'm going to tighten the lower bolts. It's recommended not to use any impact tools. To tighten the top bolt, this one takes a 14 millimeter, and you want to hand tighten it. Don't use any power tools or impact, it is recommended not to use it. So I put on the wheel, and it might sit a little higher, which is part of the new shocks. It will give you more, and now you can see that I have to tighten it even more because it pushes down on the shock, and you want to tighten this as much as you can. One thing is, if you want to replace the shock, unless one of your shocks is bad, but with age, in my case, if I'm replacing, I should replace in pair. So otherwise the new shock will get too much weight on it to when you are driving. So it's always recommended to do it in pair. So on the driver's side, it gets a little tricky because the brake lines are in the way, and you don't want to damage the brake lines because that will be more expensive to take care of. So you can see this is the bolt, and there is a little plastic piece that is sitting on it. So we will just pull that out. So once I pull this little plastic piece, it actually just is held up, and then you'll see the little hose over here. I will stick it with it so that I don't lose that, and it might come off while you are taking it off, either way. And then I'm going to take this bolt off just like the other side, and I'm going to use the same 6mm socket in there. So what I did was this one on the driver's side. So my 6mm actually did give up, so it did crack. So I had to go to Harbor Freight and get a new set. And what I've done is I put a 15-inch, you can see the wrench, and this is going to be pretty tight against in there because you don't have much clearance. And then I put the 6mm in there, and I am able to turn it. So I turn it clockwise, and that will turn the bolt anti-clockwise. So once I tighten the lower bolts on the shock, I lowered it, and once you lower it, you will see this will extend inside here, and now I can tighten the bolt on this one. So this one will be a little tricky, so I'm going to use a socket instead of a wrench because there is no clearance for the wrench to move. So I'm going to use a socket here. So for the final tightening, I used a deep socket, and if you don't have it, you should have one for this job. And this is a 14mm that goes in, and you can see that it has a big hole in there because you need to have that the stud come out so it fits in there. And then I used a little bit of the extensions I have, and I will put the links to these products. These are not very expensive. It's good to have in your toolbox, and that gave me a little play in this area because you don't want to damage any of these brake lines. And usually, these brake lines are very sensitive. And then finally I'm going to put that little piece of plastic that was covering over here. So I had moved it. Just make sure you pass it in the correct way, and then it goes in there. I took it for a test drive, and it drives really good. So no knocking anymore, and also the shocks are a little, I would say, on the tighter side. So I would prefer a little tighter shocks on these Jeeps. So your movement and cornering are much better with the tighter shocks. So I would suggest, this is a good shock to buy, and it was pretty cheap. It was like $26 on Amazon. I'll put a link on the description there. and you can find the correct size for your Jeep. And if you found this video helpful, click on the like button, and also you can subscribe to my channel